Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Maine Central. This is episode number 2. Thank you for joining me once again, and thank you so much for all of the support and feedback on episode 1. I was really shocked and surprised to see how much you guys actually enjoyed that episode, so thank you for all of that. I'd also like to mention that this is probably going to be the last video of 2017. I got really behind because of the holiday and some other stuff, some personal business type stuff. So I had intended to have another video out this year, but this is going to be it. Maybe I can get one more out, but this is probably going to be it. So I just thought I'd mention that. Next on the itinerary is I got the file back from Petrama26, and he did a little bit of work on the dem file. He laid out all the roads, he did a little bit of scenicking, he laid out all the track, and then he passed it back to me. And from there, I was able to just dive right in and start doing some scenery work and just do some building. My original intention was to do some work around Rigby, but I had some errors, surprisingly. Well, actually not surprisingly. I had some errors on Rigby Yard with the yard throat and the ladders. So we're kind of redoing that, and it's a little bit of a mess. Unfortunately, that's just how these things can be sometimes. So we're redoing that. So I moved on to just south of Portland, north of Rigby Yard is where we are. And this is what is known as Yard number 6, and this is Bancroft and Martin Rolling Mills, as it is at least on the track maps that I've been using. And this has been an extremely difficult build from a video making standpoint, mostly because I have to keep referring back to photos and Google Earth and that sort of thing in order to try to get this right. And that makes it very difficult for video, because when I'm recording in trains, if I need to go move around in Google Earth, I have to pause my recording, go out of full screen mode and go into window mode, go into Google Earth, search around for what I'm looking for, then I go back into the game and full screen it, start recording again, and so on and so forth. And that happens pretty frequently, so it's been very difficult. And then combine that with the fact that this is a big oil complex. I guess let me mention that. This, despite its name Rolling Mills, I'm not really too sure what that means. So far as I can understand, what this facility does is it's some kind of a transloading facility. And I was not able to find a lot of resources on this particular industry. I looked around online, and all I could really find was some photos, like aerial photos, and a few photos from the main line that happened to be like nearby. But I wasn't able to find any photos in the complex itself or any information about what it was. But as far as I'm able to understand, it's some kind of a transloading facility where tank cars come in, and I don't know if the tank cars are unloaded into these big tanks on the facility or if they're filled. So there's some transfer of fluids happening here. I believe it's oil. It's not a refinery itself, but they're either taking oil from rail cars and putting it onto barges, or they're taking it from barges and putting it on rail cars. I need to find that out so that we can actually configure the industry and have proper operation and stuff like that. But essentially, it involved a lot of these tanks and a lot of piping. Honestly, the piping took forever to do and to just line up. I was having issues with the splines not connecting properly, and I think that was kind of like an SP2 hotfix. What are we on, hotfix 1? I think that is an issue with that. It's just something that I had noticed since updating, but where the spline points wouldn't connect, or I couldn't put a new spline circle thing, a spline point on a spline. So I don't know, it was kind of weird. Made this kind of difficult to do, but one thing that's very trademarky about these type of complexes is the amount of pipes that are all over the place. And that's to pass the fluid between one tank to another, to where it's going to be loaded from, where it's being unloaded from. And honestly, the web of piping in these places is insane, like way beyond the point of what you could probably do for a train's build. Maybe like if you did just specifically an oil or fluid transloading facility as a standalone, you could really get in there and model all of those pipes. But, you know, what I was going for here is just trying to get as much of it done, just to get that look. Pretty much like what I try to do for most of my builds is you take it to a point where you get the details in there that that tell the viewer what this facility is, what it does, and then that's it. You don't need to go completely crazy, you know, going over the top with modeling every single pipe and every single, you know, input, output, all that kind of stuff through all over the place, because it's not necessary. We don't know what the exact operation is, what fluids are being passed through what pipes, into what tanks, and where they're going to and where they're going from. So you just have to get the idea across, and that was really what my main goal was. But it was still really hard. It was really difficult to do, especially with these splines. Because they want to connect to each other, and you can't really easily make right angles or vertical angles. So you have to sort of fake things here and there. You'll see here, like, I'm trying to put a bend in the pipe, and this one actually kind of worked. It went at a 45-degree angle, but there's some times where you bend the pipe and then it starts to break apart at the joint. So then you end up with these big gaps. So you have to have a very gradual bend or no bend at all, and it starts making things very complicated. But we did find these really great pipe assets from Dinorius Redundicus. I think that's how you say his name. All these pipes, he's got splines and regular like scenery type pipes, and they all match, and you'll see me use them here and there, some of these like right angle pipes and stuff like that, which are really neat, and they look really great. So I was using these. You guys should definitely check them out, because they're definitely really nice. But I did catch myself a few times getting hung up in like, okay, I didn't connect this tank to this pipe, so I have to figure out how that goes. And eventually I was just like, you know what? Nobody is really gonna know. A lot of this is kind of backgroundy stuff too. I mean, it's close to the tracks and stuff like that, but still, I don't think very many people are gonna go into the facility and look at what pipe is going where and be like, oh, this tank doesn't have a pipe going to it. It's not connected to anything, you know? At least I hope you guys aren't gonna do that to me, but anyway, I just did my best to connect them and get that overall look, and it was very, very challenging and time-consuming. The other thing that made this very time-consuming was just finding some assets for this. I haven't done a build quite like this. I did one on the P&B, but it was more of a refinery, so I was using different assets. This was more tanks and pipes and that sort of thing. So as I was going through and doing this build, I was locating new assets and stuff like that to actually bring into it, putting it in my pick list, and so on and so forth. Just to mention, the other thing that made this challenging was just the lack of information. And a lot of the track plans that we're looking at, that we're working off of, the track arrangement seems to change very frequently. So short of actually speaking to somebody who worked this industry on the Maine Central Railroad, I don't really know what the exact track arrangement was in the 1960s and the 1970s within our time period. It seems to just be changing constantly. So this is the track arrangement in its current form, and I'll go over this in the outro a little bit more in depth so we can kind of fly around a little bit. But there is some track that stops, and we haven't decided if we're gonna model certain like spur pieces of this industry or not, and if it fits into our era or not. So there might be some further modification to this area, but I basically did a lot of my scenery work around that, and just having that in the back of my mind that we might have to rearrange things just a little tiny bit. But, you know, without any information or an abundance of information, like there's a lot of information on Rigby Yard. There's a lot of photos of downtown Portland. There's a lot of photos of Portland Union Station. Those are all things that I can look at photos of, or I could look at a video of, or I could speak to somebody about. But for some reason, there's like a void right at this industry. So short of having a time machine, we're kind of just making things up and just trying to get the best representation of the area as possible. It's probably not going to be perfect, or it's definitely not going to be perfect in terms of track layout, but we're going to try to make it as accurate as possible, and that's the goal. I don't think that there's going to be very many people from the Maine region who are going to look at that and say, oh, you missed this track, or you missed that track, or that doesn't belong there. And, you know, I guess you could say it's an expressionistic piece of artwork where we're taking as much as we can from the real world, but there's a certain element of fantasy involved. I believe in model railroading it's called proto-freelancing, although this isn't quite a proto-freelance, but it kind of is, because we don't have all of the information. We're not modeling a very specific year. We're kind of modeling a decade, so to speak. So it's freelance in that respect. And I also want to model the Portland passenger terminal, and that was gone in the 50s, or at least passenger service ended in the 50s. So I guess in that regard, pushing passenger service into the 60s and 70s sort of makes it a little bit more of a proto-freelance. But anyway, the idea is to get as much of the region modeled as accurately as possible, and just kind of have that look that, you know, you are actually there, and we can always come back and add more details later. I think this is going to be... We're trying to get this build done as quickly as possible, but, you know, it's still going to be an ongoing thing, and we can come back and do some more details. Which is, I guess, the next thing I'd like to mention is I didn't get as much work done as I wanted to, like I said at the beginning, so my time was kind of limited, and I really was only able to get a lot of the broad brushstrokes down, and not as many of the fine details as I'd like. So I'm going to have to come back and do a little bit of detail work here and there, but again, that's going to be dependent on some of the tracks that we add or that we don't add. So I don't know if I'm going to do that in another video or if I'll do it off camera, and then in the next video we'll move to a different area. I haven't decided that, but you guys let me know down in the comments if you want to see another video here, if you want me to move on. I'm guessing you're going to want to see me move on and do this stuff kind of off camera. That's just my intuition is telling me that. And also right at this point here, if you guys know of any good ships, boats, please let me know, because this is all I was able to find, and some of them they're nice, some of them, but they're too big. So I just put a couple of tugboats down in this area to model this, and this is the other half of the transloading facility where some of these ships they come in and they're either being loaded or they're being unloaded with whatever the fluid is, if it's ethanol or oil or whatever. I'm not certain, again. So I was trying to model that here, and this is not a scene that I've ever done before, so it was kind of just roughed it in really quickly. Definitely have to come back and add some more details and stuff like that, but there might be some trackage through here that we're going to add. So I'm going to have to keep that in mind, but I've never done a harbor scene or anything quite like that, docks. Especially something like this that has these pipes that are going out to that are supposed to be going out to these ships to load or unload them. So, you know, it was kind of just look at photos and replicate it as best as possible. So I guess that's probably my main talking points for this. I'm just gonna commentate on what I'm doing as we go forward here. So the next thing that I'm doing here is getting some of these. I found some of these industrial assets, and I remember them from, I want to say, trains 2010 or 2012. And I think they're meant to be like rooftop assets or something like that, to go on top of like some factories or something. But they seem to fit pretty well into this facility here. And, you know, I don't have any idea how these things work. So I just started putting them down. Anything with lots of pipes and tanks and stuff like that, it seems to fit pretty well. So I'm imagining it being some kind of a pumping system to keep the pressure in the fluid high. And at this point in the build, this is probably one of my favorite parts, is finally getting down to doing some of the texturing. And honestly, this is one of my favorite parts just in general when it comes to route building, is doing the texturing and the scenery, because at that point, that's really where it begins to come to life. Everything suddenly has shape to it. And I think you'll notice that as I paint all the ground texture down and do a little bit of detail work here and there, that once you get some of this ground texture in place, suddenly there's more dimension to the build itself. And I think really good texturing work brings a lot to a map. You know, if you're blending different textures and you're mixing them up, and it's just, you're painting. It's really what it is, you're painting. And the correct mixture of these paints, of these textures, has a really great effect, and it pulls the track in. It makes the track feel like it has place. You've got these roads and these parking lots and stuff like that. One of the things that I saw on Google Earth is a lot of these roads are just kind of like dirt, like paths. There's not even a road there. It's just kind of like, well, the trucks drive there enough, so it's like, it kind of makes like a dirt road, but it's not a really dirt road. So if you look at this region on Google Earth, you'll see that there's a lot of just dirt and like swirly patterns on the ground where trucks are driving and stuff like that. So it was kind of difficult to figure out how I was going to replicate that sort of look. But, you know, just getting in and doing some regular old texturing seems to have done the job. And as we build a little bit more in and add some more textures, it really comes to life. It really starts feeling like a real place, to me at least, and I hope you agree. But we were adding some of these trees. These are new trees. Petrama picked them out. Honestly, I really wanted to do this as a fall scene, a fall layout, or route. But there's really just not a ton of assets out there, so at the moment. So I'll have to save my fall theme for some other build, or maybe a build challenge or something like that. But so he picked out some of these new trees. I can't remember what the name is. You'll have to look at the asset list or pause the video. But they're pretty nice. They're just billboard trees and shrubs, but they fill the area really nicely. They're not too flat. They don't reflect the light kind of funny or anything like that. So I do like that. Laying down some of these fences here. These are also new fences that Petrama picked out. And they're just like your generic sort of, backyard sort of fence. I forgot what they're called. What is that? Chain link fence. That's the word. Slipped in my mind. I'm actually recording this at 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is my morning voice and my morning brain. This is very different for me. I usually record at night, but I'm trying to... New year, new me, new goals. I'm trying to do morning stuff instead of night stuff. But anyway, he found these fences, which are really nice. They're kind of rusty and beat up. And the thing that I don't like about them, though, is how the splines connect. And maybe I'll show you that in live mode, but the spline point is like behind where the actual end of the spline is. So you kind of get these weird crisscross patterns if you break a spline in half. But they look really nice, and we're going to be using those. Something else came to mind. Oh, in between, I have to save that for live mode too, but I'll mention it now. In between some of these tanks, there's sort of like mounds of earth that, from what I can tell, and this is just my gut instinct telling me about what these are for, I think if there's a leak in one of these pipes or one of these tanks, it'll help it be contained. So I'll show you a little bit more in specific detail, but instead of doing that, because you can't do it on this kind of scale in trains without it looking funny. Instead of doing that, I just used fences to divide out the scenes. So I think maybe at one point I tried to put it in, but anyway, if you just picture like each one of these tanks having a big ridge in between it and like a big square ridge around it, just in case if anything leaked, it would contain it within that area and you wouldn't have like a big spill all over the place, all over the whole facility, so it helps contain it a little bit. One thing also that I should mention that I found really interesting about this location is the amount of vegetation that is in between some of these tanks and on the facility. A lot of times I feel like when I'm driving by big facilities like this, it's just a big like wasteland of just dirt and gravel and then tanks and all kinds of industrial stuff. But in this case, maybe just because it's Maine and that's just how Maine is, but in this case, there's actually a lot of vegetation that sort of divides out some of these separate parts of the scenes. And again, I don't know if this is what it looked like in the 60s and 70s, but from what I can tell from the photos that I have and the way that it looks today, that seems to be pretty much the case. And, 40 years isn't, I guess it's enough time for new trees to grow if there were none back in the 70s. So, I mean, it is what it is, but if you look at photos, I think it accurately represents it to a point, And I do like it. I like the look of the vegetation actually in between all of the facilities and stuff like that. I think it's pretty cool. Helps divide out the space a little tiny bit so it's not just a big flat area with buildings sticking out, I guess, and feels less isolated, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But I think that's going to do it for my commentary at this point. We got a couple more minutes on the time-lapse. This is a very long time-lapse. I should mention, while I was doing this, I didn't think that this was going to be going this long, and I shot for a little while, and it didn't feel like I was going to have enough, so I kept going, and I was shocked when I put it into Premiere, and I was like, oh man, this is like a 20-something minute time-lapse, but I didn't feel like I actually got a lot of work done. I wanted to finish this whole thing, but I don't know, whatever. But that's going to do it for the commentary. I'm going to let the time-lapse run out, enjoy the music, and I'll see you guys in live mode in just a moment.
it's time to leave it all behind. She's out of her mind, but at least I let her be everything she ever needs to be. I might be out of my mind, and I know it's hard to see. All she ever wants is me. 'Consequences of our sins doesn't have to be that bad. The summer's closing in, it was the best time I ever had. And the rest is history without an end. I still think of her sometimes to my defense. What is she doing now? How is she holding on? I guess it never will be alright time to stop. She's out of her mind, but at least I let her be everything she ever needs to be. I might be out of my mind, and I know it's hard to see. All she ever wants is me.
Alright dudes, here we are in the last half of this video, and I've got a little bit more coffee in my system, a little bit more awake, so I think I'm good to go. Got a few more things we could talk about. We'll take a look at this facility. I didn't get as much done as I wanted to, as I had intended to, especially since I missed a video last week, but, you know, I ran out of time, and this is what I got, and the holidays here, and all this and that. I can make a million excuses, but this is what we got done. This is this episode. Still lots and lots more to do here, but I'm liking the vibe. I'm liking how it's coming out. So I'll just kind of pan around a little bit, talk about some stuff. So some of the track that I was mentioning that we might need to connect or add is these two. I keep saying I noticed I just listened back to my playback, my commentary, and I'm like saying every couple minutes. I gotta get better about that. It's so difficult to do. So these two tracks right here, they on the track plan that we've been looking at, they look like they're supposed to kind of go up this way and go into a building like this. But Petrama and I both kind of agree that we think that this building was added later on, so it's not necessary. However, there's a track over here. This track right here, on some of the track plans that we're looking at, has some trackage that comes up like this and sort of comes down this way into here. So we're not entirely too sure where and when that fits. If you guys know, if you're a local or if you're watching this video and you actually have some information on this area, let me know if this track went anywhere and what it was for in the mid 60s, early 70s sort of time frame when we are modeling. So if that's the case, I'll move this building and we'll move a few things around here and add the track. But essentially, the way that Petrama and I are gonna do this is, for now, he's gonna lay out the tracks and the roads and that sort of thing, and probably do some of the signaling and stuff like that. And then I'm gonna do the scenery building and that sort of thing. So he's laid out the track. I guess I'll show you quickly. Heading over to downtown Portland, and then heading off this way. We got the Mountain Division heading out here, and then over here, I believe, it's hard to tell on this DEM file, but I believe this is where Portland Union Station would be. So I'd like to add that in. There should be some more trackage in here. He just laid down some of the preliminary track. Here's a 4-track bridge that has since been abandoned, but I think we're gonna add that in so that it fits our time frame, or we'll make it work. It looks like this might be abandoned. Again, we need to do some research on what tracks are active in the time frame that we are modeling, and as compared to what we're actually able to find on Google Earth. But again, he also laid out some of these trees and some of the scenery and stuff like that. I don't know if it was an automatic thing that he did when he ported the dem file back in, or what. But anyway, I do like these trees. We'll take a look at what they are quickly. So another one with a bizarre name, D8K4 Low Dervo 26. So these are kind of cool. They're on the download station. You check them out if you like them. They have some undergrowth splines, which are really nice for filling out areas. And these do look really good. They don't have like a shiny side like some of the JVC stuff, like the ones that I'm using in the P&B. Has a little bit of like a specular sort of thing going on. But yeah, so I'm gonna have to come back and do a little bit more detailing. I think you saw like at the end I did added some of these street lights and this little scene here, which I think is pretty neat. It's nice when you're entering the yard. So I think as this fills out a little bit more, it'll definitely develop into something really, really cool. I hope. But yeah, with these roads are obviously not permanent. They're just laid out as placeholders. We got to add a bridge over here over the Fore River. And let me look at my notes here. I do have a couple more things to address. I'll show you those the fences in case you're interested in that. And okay, so I know what I'm going to talk about next. So here's the fences. Mesh fence, 6-foot rusty. And I'll just show you quickly what I mean by where the spline point is. You can see that the center of the spline point is here, but there's overhang over here. So you want to make like a right angle like I normally do. You connect this. That looks fine. Normally what I would do is I just hit I just use this tool, the split spline tool, and split it, and you end up with a perfect 90-degree angle, assuming you did that right, but you end up with a perfect intersection. But with these, because the center of the spline is actually a little bit further back, you don't get that. You have to adjust it, which is a little annoying, but it's not the end of the world. They are pretty nice. We'll take a closer look. So you can see they are very nicely detailed. Stop moving the camera for a second so you can get a good look at that. Very nicely detailed, and there are these gates that go along with it. So you get some fence gates. I believe there is both rusty and non-rusty versions, which is always appreciated, always nice. So here's another one. And then mesh 6-foot gate. There's a non-rusty one. So pretty nice. I wanted to go with the rusty ones. I think that works. This is a coastal town. There's a lot of salt water in the air, or salt water, salt in the air. You know, I don't know, whatever you would refer to that as near when you're near the beach and the air just has that salty sort of taste. There is salt in the air somehow. So there's that. And last thing I want to mention is if you're a fan of the P&B, on December 30th, let me just double check my calendar. I believe December 30th, we're going to be doing a live stream. And during that live stream, it's going to be a P&B live stream. I'm going to have Bill M will be on there. Check my calendar. Saturday, December 30th. That is not New Year's. That's the day before New Year's. So we're going to be doing a live stream on the P&B. I haven't decided yet if we're going to be building or if we're going to be operating, but I'm going to get Bill M on a call, and we're going to chat about the P&B. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to prepare a few questions. I'm sure he'll have some stuff to talk about. And you guys should pop in, ask Bill your questions, and we'll hang out for a little bit, figure out something to do. Maybe we'll do a little bit of both. I have a couple more scenes that I need to kind of tie up and finish off before I can feel a little bit more comfortable about releasing. So maybe we could do that for a little bit and then do a little bit of building, or a little bit of operating, do a combination of two. It's going to be Saturday afternoon. I've got the day off. I think most people will have the day off, so that'll be pretty cool. So mark your calendars. And I think that is gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are a Christmas celebrator, have a Merry Christmas. I'm gonna be out of town for the next few days myself on the holiday. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays and all those things. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.